Hi there, I'm Sasha the Catalyst, author and founder at sashaclark.com. Welcome back to Seekers Week, where seekers from all over the world come together to approach the text of Scripture and take a peek behind the veneer of their favorite translation. Our hope is to foster love and understanding that will transcend culture and custom to empower anyone who loves the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to have a meaningful relationship with him and his chosen people, the Jews. This week, we are on a journey through what most seventh grade Catholic boys would consider the raunchiest book of the Bible, the Song of Songs, pronounced Shir Ha Shirim in Hebrew. This is part 3 of 7 in our study of the greatest romantic operetta ever. If you're just joining us, great, but be sure to go back to parts 1 and 2 to get some background information. As we discussed last time, Shir Ha Shirim is actually 6 songs with the same theme, like an operetta or a musical. My interpretation is that each of the songs represents a segment of Jewish history. And today we'll explore the second song of Shir Ha Shirim. Hopefully you have your backpack ready to go with a copy of the Song of Songs in Hebrew and English. Interlinear is best, a Hebrew lexicon, and again, there's a link to my blog on my blog for my favorite Hebrew lexicon, an open mind, a basic understanding of Pardes that we discussed in the introduction video, a heart for God, a sense of adventure, and an open mind. We wrapped up the first song with a plea from the bride to not to stir up love until it pleases, for just as a rose cannot be forced to bloom before its time, love that's forced tends to turn, sour. And indeed, the King of the universe has placed all of his hope in this one man, Abraham, and this one family, Isaac and Jacob, and their descendants, and is about to transition them from a family into a nation. And he needed them to understand the profundity of his love toward them. He needed to arouse in them a reciprocal love, because nothing, not a single flesh of the wound, can compare to the hurt of spurned love. So gently, I mean ever so gently, he began to stir their hearts with his left hand, while he shook the idolatrous world of Egypt with his mighty right hand. So today I'm going to give you a few random clues from the section of scripture known as the second song, and see if you can guess what period of Jewish history it is referring to allegorically. But before we do that, it's important to note that the teaching from Song 1 about the king, the Jews, and the Muslims and the Christians, those are not definitive boxes in the sands of time. In fact, I know a really nice lady from our synagogue who loved God with all her heart and wasn't affiliated with any religion, and found out by accident that her mother was Jewish, making her Jewish as well. So unless we're all willing to do a DNA test and accept the rules of that as binding, which we're not, we cannot really afford to judge another soul and their relationship with God. That really seems to be his department, right? So, and what's to say that her 3% Jewishness wasn't what gave her the strength to love God without the support of a religious community, right? Okay, so to the clues. Shall we begin? Clue number 1. Hark, my beloved, behold, he comes, leaping on the mountains, skipping among the hills. Song of Songs, chapter 2, verse 8. So who's speaking? The bride. And where is her beloved coming from? The mountains and the hills. What does this remind you of? It reminds me of Moses, like responding with alacrity after getting the call from God to go and be his emissary to Pharaoh on behalf of the Jewish people, starting the redemption and freedom from slavery. My beloved spoke and said to me, rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. For lo, the winter is past, and the rain is over and gone, and the flowers appear on the earth, and the time of singing is come, and the voice of the turtle is heard in our land. Song of Songs, chapter 2, verses 10 through 12. So the bride is still speaking, but what else is going on? What time of year is it? Spring, right? Well, here in Iowa, the bride would have said, lo, the winter is past and I can see my grass again. The snow is gone. But in Israel, the rainy season makes up the winter months. So instead of snow, they get a lot of rain in Israel. So, and then the flowers would be appearing again. Clue number 3. Oh, my dove, in the clefts of the rock. Oh, sorry. Oh, my dove, that art in the clefts of the rock, in the covert of the cliff, Let me see thy countenance. Let me hear your voice. For sweet is your voice, and your countenance is comely. Now who's speaking? The king. He says she's in the clefts of the rocks, or as we would say modernly, in between a rock and a hard place. But he wants to hear her voice. It's sweet to him. Is that bringing any imagery to mind? When was Israel between a rock and a hard place, and God was watching, waiting, and welcoming their voices in song when it was over? Clue number 4. Scarce had I passed from them when I found him whom my soul loves. I held him and would not let him go until I had brought him into my mother's house and into the chamber of her that conceived me. Song of Songs 3:4. The bride is speaking again, and what is she referring to now? This reminds me of a test of the Jewish people shortly after they become free. How did she bring the king of the universe into her mother's house? I mean, he is everywhere, really, and at all times. I mean, how can this be? What is the chamber of her that conceived me? In Judaism, we consider the collective group of people, the Jews, as our mother. So, as in, like the one who passed along our traditions and our recipes and our mannerisms, our dress and our way of life. So, yes, eventually this was all that all of our traditions were codified, but before then it was passed down orally through families from one generation to the next. So, any guesses? Okay, if you guessed the first Passover of the Exodus, then you guessed correctly, or at least according to my allegorical Remez interpretation. I think the symbolism of spring in clue number 1 is telling us about when Moses immediately obeyed the call to come back to Egypt. Now, our sages say that the proof that he did not delay in obedience to that calling was that he didn't even wait long enough to circumcise his own son, which is why they ended up doing it along the way. Clue number 2 is when Moses and Pharaoh have their moments and a couple of plagues happen, and then the plagues start to happen only to the Egyptians. So we see that the first, I think it's 4 plagues happen to everyone, and then past that, only the plagues are only happening to the Egyptians. I think the Jewish people at that point begin to hope there that the winter has passed and that the spring is coming. And clue number 3 is when God leads them to the Red Sea, and they're trapped, the sea on one side and the Egyptian army on the other, and then he's kind of cooing over them, soothing them while they wait until dawn. And then God is anticipating the song of the sea that they burst forth with as soon as they're delivered. Clue number 4 reminds me of the testings, including the golden calf incident directly after the deliverance from Egypt, while just before they construct the Mishkan in the wilderness. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles and by the hinds of the field, that you awaken not, nor stir up love until it pleases. Song of Songs 3:5, and we have arrived back at this verse again. Let the rose bloom on its own. Just don't force it. Get acquainted with the lover of your soul. Keep the conversation alive and let that relationship grow. So there you have it. Song 2 takes us from the burning bush to the Mishkan in the wilderness and covers the exodus from Egypt. What's going to happen next? They'll live happily ever after, right? I wish. Tune in next time and we'll watch this rose bloom together. Again, my name is Sasha the Catalyst, the author and founder of SashaClark.com. And I just thank you so much for your time and attention today. We have covered a lot of ground in our short time together, and I hope you found this series valuable so far. I hope and pray that you're making connections and seeing things you haven't seen before, and in his strength, maybe unearthing some beautiful gems. Of course, you're invited to continue to explore more along the shore of the vast ocean of scripture with me and uncover even more buried treasure. Feel free to write me an email or send me a text, or hop on over to my website, SashaClark.com, and subscribe to my blog as well as this YouTube channel, and continue the journey of a lifetime together. Until we meet again, shalom.